Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Puri Vrajagacharya Ashtotar Satta Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mayi Ki Jai, Jamuna Mayi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaura Premanande Hari Haribo. Hare Krishna. I welcome everyone for Srimad Bhagavatam with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami and friends. I was just now checking my phone to see if Maharaj may have sent me a message. And apparently he did send me a message, and I didn't even hear the little bell ring when the message came in, which was 3 hours ago. I'll read the message to you. Here's the message. Scheduled for 26 2nd Avenue again today, so we'll miss. Back tomorrow. My apologies. Hare Krishna. So, fortunately, we have in our list of participants today very generous and merciful readers. So, we'll be reading tonight the end of the chapter. Dhruva Maharaj goes back to Godhead, and perhaps starting another chapter. There are some significant purports still, so we'll see how far we get. And thank you everyone so much for being here. It is Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025 in New York, and we are starting tonight with Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, 12th chapter. Dhruva Maharaj goes back to Godhead, and tonight's starting verse is 29. And they're grouped together in both our BBT version and in Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's version. So there are two verses together with a single purport. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Purnamasyam Sinivalyam Dvadashyam Shavane Tava Dinakshaye Vyatipate Sankramerka Dine Piva Shravayet Shadadananam Tirthapada Padashraya Nechchangs Tatratmanatmanam Santushta Iti Siddhyati. Persons who have completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord should recite this narration of Dhruva Maharaj without taking remuneration. Specifically, recitation is recommended on the full moon or dark moon day, on the day after Ekadashi, on the appearance of the Shravana star, at the end of a particular tithi, or the occasion of Vyatipata, at the end of the month, or on Sunday. Such recitation should, of course, be performed before a favorable audience. When recitation is performed this way, without professional motive, the reciter and audience become perfect. Professional reciters may ask money to extinguish the blazing fire within their bellies, but they cannot make any spiritual improvement or become perfect. It is therefore strictly forbidden to recite Srimad Bhagavatam as a profession to earn a livelihood. Only one who is completely surrendered at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, depending fully on Him for personal maintenance or even for maintenance of his family, can attain perfection by recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord and his devotees. The process can be summarized as follows. The audience must be faithfully receptive to the Bhagavat message, and the reciter should completely depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Bhagavat recitation must not be a business. If done the right way, not only does the reciter achieve perfect satisfaction, but the Lord also is very satisfied with the reciter and the audience, and thus both are liberated from material bondage simply by the process of hearing. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurunmyena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manopistang Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Rupam Sagrajatam Sadvetam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitangscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So there's a list here of the most recommended times to recite this pastime of Dhruva Maharaj. Previously, we were hearing that anybody in general that recites it gets so many benefits. I'll read the last verse. One should chant of the character and activities of Dhruva Maharaj, both in the morning and in the evening, with great attention and care in a society of brahmanas or other twice-born persons. So that's the and now we're hearing the when, all these different very specific times within the calendar, actually, and not having been brought up in the culture that is very steeped in Vedic astrology, I really can't comment too deeply. There's a couple of things that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti says, however, for those of us who are interested in such things. He talks about the Kshaya Tithi. At the end of the Tithi, this is a period of time that's calculated somehow or other. So he says, this is a solar day in which a particular lunar Tithi does not start before sunrise and finish before the next sunrise. So he's giving some clarifications. And then he says, Sankranti is a day on which the sun enters a new zodiac sign. And then Vyatipata days, which is another thing mentioned in a verse. Vyatipata days are new moon day falling on a Sunday, or when the moon is in certain constellations. And you have to wonder, of course, the question may arise, if this narration of Dhruva Maharaj's pastimes is absolute. We've heard recently in Prabhupada's purports that recitation of the pastimes of the Lord's devotees is as good as the recitation of the pastimes of the Lord himself, which means they're absolute and they confer absolute benefit on the hearers. So why these conditions? Why is it? If something is absolute, that means it's always good. So then, why indeed would any particular days be better than another? It seems a bit contradictory. And I was hoping that Maharaj would be here to ask that question, but that's not going to happen today. And the other question that arose, and I'm sure the learned assembly of Vaishnavas here will be able to clear this up for me in short order. But the the gist of the purport is that one should not recite the Bhagavatam with any kind of material motive. How is it exactly worded here? It is therefore strictly forbidden to recite Srimad Bhagavatam as a profession to earn a livelihood. And then right after that statement, he says, only one who is completely surrendered at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, depending fully on him for personal maintenance, or even for maintenance of his family, can attain perfection by recitation of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So on the one hand, it says you should not do it as a profession. And on the other hand, it says you should do it as if you're completely surrendered to the Lord. Now, the question in my mind, which you might guess, is that if you are completely surrendered to the Lord, aren't you sort of expecting the Lord to maintain you? So in that sense, you're not submitting a timesheet to the Lord. Here, Lord, I put in my time, now pay me. But still, the idea is there that you're surrendered. Surrendered means you are prepared to accept whatever the Lord sends you. Um, but he says, or even for maintenance of his family, can attain perfection. So it may be a fine point. Maybe I'm the only one here who's having, in whom the question is arising. But I would like to ask the assembly of esteemed learned Vaishnavas in this Sangha that how do you reconcile these two statements? On one hand, not to ask, and on the other hand, you're implicitly expecting the Lord to maintain you. So your thoughts are sincerely and eagerly sought. And while those thoughts are taking shape and coming in, Prabhu Krishna Prabhu offers months in the calendar named after nakshatras. And there's a list of 12. Chaitra, Vaishakha, Jeshta, Ashadha, and number 5 listed here is Shravana, often called Shravan, which is July and August. And Bhadrapad or Bhadra, Ashvin, Kartika, Margashirsha or Agrahayana, Posha, Magha, and Palguna. Thank you, Prabhu Krishna Prabhu. So I'm seriously hoping to hear from the devotees here on this point, or any point actually. Eager to hear very much. I suppose if no one has anything to say, we can move on, but oh no, okay. Vijay Krishna Prabhu says, it's not you, it's the process of Sharanagati instructing you how to do it. Sorry about that noise. So Vijay Krishna Prabhu, would you kindly expand on that very sutra-like text?
You're just following what the process of Sharanagati is wanting for you to do. It's not that you yourself invented the process of Sharanagati. So you follow what Guru Sadhan Shastra is asking you for you to do in order to chant Srimad Bhagavatam in the proper way.
Okay.
If anyone is to be blamed, is the process of Sharanagati, not you.
That's good. That's good. Thank you. I like that. So in other words, we do our duty. Our duty is to hear, and specifically to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, and specifically to do so in a surrendered mood. And if we're doing that, that's the process that we've been recommended to follow, and that's it. We should be surrendered and we should hear. So if those things are in place, then we're ready to accept whatever comes. Krishna, Mare Krishna Rake Kre, Rake Krishna Mare Ke. Krishna wants to kill you. No one can save you. Krishna wants to save you. No one can kill you. But it's not like we're making an extra pitch we're not tallying our hours that we put in reading Bhagavatam and presenting them to the Lord or anyone else, saying, "Okay, pay me," that sort of thing. I think I understand. Is that?
Yes, that is the right understanding.
Okay? Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Let's read Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on these two. I thought it was also interesting here that Sunday says on a Sunday. That's another one of the specific days that's supposed to be good. And of course, like I said, I already admitted my failings in understanding anything about Vedic astrology or calendars or anything like that, or even Western astrology. But I had thought that growing up in the West, we observe days called Sunday, but the in the Vedic science of astrology, the word is what is it? Arka. It's right in the Sanskrit. Arka Dine, which literally means Sunday. Arka means the sun or the sun planet, the sun god, and Dine means day. So apparently there's a Sunday. So here's the verse, the way it shows up in the Banu Maharaj's translation. A person who has taken shelter of the Lord should make those with faith hear this story on the full moon, dark moon, on Dvadashi, during Shravana month, on Kshaya Titis, Vyatipata days, on Sankrantis, or on Sundays, satisfying himself by his self without desire for profit, he attains perfection. And here's the commentary. Shradhananam, this is a grammatical thing. I'm not even sure if I follow it here. Shradhananam has an accusative meaning it's the object of the verb. And that means at the end there, favorable audience. And then he says, one should not accept payment or other articles because one satisfies the self by the self. The devotee, in making others hear, thinks, and this is what the devotee thinks, this devotee is hearing with faith the topics of Krishna that I am reciting. That is my payment. In this way, he attains perfection. So he's satisfied reciting this chapter of Bhagavatam or any other chapter of Bhagavatam. He's satisfied just that others are hearing, and specifically favorably. That's one of the qualifications here. I forgot who it was. Was it perhaps it was Saraswati Mata that no, it was Priti Purna Madhavi Devi was talking about the qualifications of the speaker and the hearer. She made a very interesting point yesterday. So interesting, in fact, that I completely forgot it. I'll have to go back and listen to that. But it's on the recording from yesterday, talking about the qualifications. Maybe someone else with a better memory remembers exactly what was said. But anyway, let me see if there's anything else in the chat before we move on or not. Praveen Krishna Prabhu says, I think the personal maintenance mentioned here is not through Bhagavatam recitation. That point Prabhupada highlights. Okay. Fair enough. Praveen Krishna Prabhu, I must say, I'm grateful so much for your association on all these classes and your posting of the verses and your comments. I'm looking forward to the day when you can actually speak and we can hear you and see you and you can comment and all those things. I hope that day may come. Meanwhile, we're happy to see you in the chat and just know that you are there. Hare Krishna. Madhupati Prabhu, I'm very glad that you're with us today. Would you be able to read our next verse, which is 51?
Okay. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Gurudas Jayadvaita Swami. Text 51. Jnanam agyata tattvaya yodadhyat satpate amritam kripalo dinanathasya deva tusya anugrinate. The narration of Dhruva Maharaj is sublime knowledge for the attainment of immortality. Persons unaware of the absolute truth can be led to the path of truth. Those who, out of transcendental kindness, take on the responsibility of becoming master protectors of the poor living entities, automatically gain the interest and blessings of the demigods. Jnanam agyata means knowledge which is unknown almost throughout the entire world. No one knows actually what is absolute truth. Materialists are very proud of their advancement in education, in philosophical speculation, and in scientific knowledge. But no one actually knows what the absolute truth is. The great sage Maitreya, therefore, recommends that to enlighten people about the absolute truth, Tattva, devotees should preach the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the entire world. Srila Vyasadeva especially compiled this great literature of scientific knowledge because people are completely unaware of the absolute truth. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, it is said that Vyasadeva, the learned sage, compiled this great Bhagavad Puran just to stop the ignorance of the mass of people. Because people do not know the absolute truth, this Srimad Bhagavatam was specifically compiled by Vyasadeva under the instruction of Narada. Generally, even though people are interested in understanding the truth, they take to speculation and reach at most the conception of impersonal Brahman. But very few men actually know the personality of Godhead. Recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam is specifically meant to enlighten people about the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although there is no fundamental difference between impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and the Supreme Person, factual immortality cannot be obtained unless and until one attains the stage of associating with the Supreme Person. Devotional service, which leads to the association of the Supreme Lord, is actual immortality. Pure devotees, out of compassion for the fallen souls, are Kripalu, very kind to people in general. They distribute this Bhagavad knowledge all over the world. A kind-hearted devotee is called Dinanath, protector of the poor. Ignorant mass of people. Lord Krishna is also known as Dinanath or Dinabandhu, the master or actual friend of the poor living entities. And his pure devotee also takes the same position of Dinanath. The Dinanaths or devotees of Lord Krishna who preach the path of devotional service become the favorites of the demigods. Generally, people are interested in worshipping the demigods, especially Lord Shiva, in order to obtain material benefits. But a pure devotee who engages in preaching the principles of devotional service as prescribed in the Srimad Bhagavatam does not need to separately worship the demigods. The demigods are automatically pleased with him and offer all the blessings within their capacity. As by watering the root of a tree, the leaves and branches are automatically watered. So, by executing pure devotional service to the Lord, the branches, twigs, and leaves of the Lord, known as demigods, are automatically pleased with the devotee and they offer all benediction. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurmitan Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So, these are final verses summarizing this pastime of Dhruva Maharaj. And the Palashruti, what kind of fruits, benefits one will get from hearing the pastimes of the Supreme Lord or his close associates, right? His devotees, his pure devotees. Because when you hear about pure devotees, since they have taken shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, we automatically hear about the Supreme Lord. Because they are completely absorbed in serving the Supreme Lord in one or the other methods, right? And that's what we see here in the narration of Dhruva Maharaj's pastime, right? One can attain immortality just by hearing the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj, right? In the Bhagavad Gita it is mentioned, Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatanam api siddhanam kaschinam veti tatvataha. Out of many thousands of people, Manushyanam sahasreshu, right? One can endeavor, right, for perfection. Out of many thousands of those who are endeavoring for perfection, hardly one knows main truth. So, as far as the tattva is concerned, yes, by their own endeavor, the jnanis can come to the understanding of that everything is Brahman, right? So they can come to the impersonal realization, but they cannot come to Paramatma realization or Bhagavan realization without coming in association with a devotee. Bhaktyamam abhijanati yamana sasmi tattvata. Without only the devotee can understand the Supreme Lord. Right. In the previous verse, Srila Prabhupada mentioned about these professional reciters. Right. The professional reciters who are reciting for money would not be able to transform anybody. Right. Would not be able to transform anybody. They're just reciting for money. While here Srila Prabhupada in the second paragraph mentions recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam is specifically meant to enlighten people about the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right. Although there is no difference between the impersonal Brahman, localized Paramatma, and the Supreme Person, factual immortality cannot be obtained unless and until one attains the stage of associating with the Supreme Person. Right. So by being impersonally realized, one will not get factual immortality. Bhavanam janmanante jnanavan mam praprate. After many thousands of births, a jnani will ultimately understand that ultimately everything is coming from Vasudeva. Vasudevam sarvamiti sa Mahatma Dullabha. And that Mahatma is Dullabha, very rare. Okay. So, many wonderful points Srila Prabhupada has made in the purport, even watering the root of a tree. The root is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ultimately, when you water the root, all the leaves and the branches will get nourishment. Similarly, talking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the demigods will be automatically pleased. You don't have to separately satisfy the demigods. Right. Okay. Any questions, discussions?
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
You
There were a couple of things that I had that I wanted to maybe bring up in case that you might be able to comment on them, because you are one of the most, if not the most, senior disciple of Maharaj. And I count on you in such circumstances to represent him, because I know that he would have something to say, so I expect you would as well. This particular verse, the way it's put it, the Dina Nathasya, protector of the poor, says those who out of transcendental kindness take on the responsibility of becoming master protectors, they gain the interest and blessings of the demigods. And Prabhupada does say in the purport, devotees should preach the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the entire world. This reminded me of that verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita that Lord Chaitanya spoke to the kurma brahmana yare dekatare kaha Krishna upadesh amara agyay guru hanyatara edesh. Says, instruct everyone to follow the orders of Lord Sri Krishna as they are given in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. In this way, become a spiritual master and try to liberate everyone in this land. So this whole point of becoming protector of the poor, it seems to be, on the one hand, we understand that the Kshatriyas, should they ever come into existence as a distinct class, they're meant to protect us. But really, in today's purport that you just read, Prabhupada is talking about the concept of protecting people by giving them transcendental knowledge, and he was very keen on that. There is also another point that I wanted to raise, but is there something more that you could maybe say based on that so far?
No, that's a good point. Was in the purport, Sir Prabhupada has mentioned many wonderful points. Few points which I mentioned, the point which I skipped is in another part, which you brought that up. Yes, that it's not meant only for some class of people. This knowledge is meant for everybody. You cannot just from the recitation point of view, the reciter does not need to take remuneration. One cannot be even having a show saying that there is a ticketed event. Whoever buys a ticket will attend the class. No, it's meant for everybody. Dinanatha, right? Protector of the poor, but at the same time, Srila Prabhupada also mentions that, okay, yes, protector of the poor, but we should not think that Lord is Daridra Narayan.
Right.
Right. So,
right.
Protector of the poor, and ultimately, as far as poor, I think the way the meaning of poor is poor bereft of spiritual knowledge is poverty. Just like prasadam. Prasadam is meant for everybody. Not that, okay, we go to a poverty-stricken place and distribute food. Even a rich person should be given that khichdi because he is poor of receiving the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Similarly, so in that way, Dinanath is the protector of the poor, poor of those who are bereft of spiritual knowledge. So we should distribute this message to everybody. And you mentioned nicely, Yare Deko Tare Kaho Krishna Upades. Yeah. Is that okay, Prabhuji?
Oh, Prabhu, thank you so much. The second part of what I was going to say also underscores all the points that you made. Of course, I'm reading the Prabhupada Lilamrita, and one of the things that is interesting is when you come across Prabhupada saying at a certain point that he wanted to institute within ISKCON an educational system and a degree system based on the devotee's knowledge of Shastra. Mm-hmm. And he had it already set up even before 1975, this whole system of Bhakti Shastri, etc., and all the way up to, yes, and all the way up to Bhakti Vedanta. And he said, I want that all my disciples can inherit the title Bhakti Vedanta. And this is what he said. He said, perhaps by 1975, they can all start initiating disciples.
Yeah.
So he wanted all his disciples to become spiritual master, which means by extension, all of his followers. It's not just a job for a few people. Everyone is meant to do it. So.
Yep. Wonderful. Wonderful point. Yeah. Amara Agya Te Guru Hoy. Everybody can initiate.
And there are some questions for you in the chat. Mm-hmm. Vijay Krishna Prabhu asks, he says, why is it that if I do not know the absolute truth, the Srimad Bhagavatam does categorize me as poor. What if I have millions of dollars in my bank account? Isn't it enough for me to be categorized as wealthy? Please, thank you, and Hare Krishna. I think maybe you've already addressed this.
Yeah. The was that Alexander the Great? The example of Alexander the Great, when he's dying, he's mentioning that his coffin should have two holes in the front, so that when he's laid down in his coffin, his hands are outside. That I conquered the entire world, but I'm going empty-handed. I'm poor. The coffin should be carried by the best of the physicians. That though I had so much of wealth, millions of dollars in my bank, I cannot cure or conquer death, and these physicians could not help me conquer death. Okay. And all the things which I looted from everywhere should be sprayed like emeralds and everything on the ground through which the coffin is passed through. So very instructive, Srila Prabhupada mentioning this wonderful example. And ultimately, this material riches, at the end of the day, when we look at it, when our pious sukruti goes away, the silver spoon which we may be born with, or the silver spoon which we may be carrying with us, will all be taken away. But the real knowledge is the spiritual knowledge that will stay. Niyabhikramanastasti pratyavana vidyate. There is no loss or diminution in this process. Whatever we got in this life will carry. That bank balance does not go zero. Trump just announced today all these wonderful tariffs which he's going to have on different countries on his goods, and automatically billions of dollars are lost and gained in different parts. Right. So at any time people can become bankrupt, but the spiritual knowledge, that the person who has spiritual knowledge never becomes bankrupt. Right. Never becomes bankrupt. Because Maharobi Rakhobi Joy Chatmar is completely dependent on the Supreme Lord. Is that okay, Vijay Krishna?
He's sent you
Oh,
numerous heart emojis. Yes, so I think maybe
yeah. Madhupati Das Prabhu has to be expected. Again, a most clarifying and beautiful answer to my question. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna.
so. Prabhin Krishna Prabhu has a question for you. He says, couldn't one be considered fully surrendered if he is having a job for the maintenance of his family?
Yeah. Well, here yasya haridasya karmana manasa gira niklasu api avastasu jivan mukta uchyate. If one by his mind, body and words always surrender to the Supreme Lord, even though he may be engaged in the material world, he is considered to be a liberated person. Is that okay, Praveen Krishna Babu?
We can assume the answer is yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yes, he says thank you. Okay. We're good.
Okay.
So we have a bit of time left and we have one verse left, and I saw Radhesha Prabhu's name in a list of participants. Prabhu, does that mean that you are actually participating, and can you in fact read our next verse?
Sure. It's the last one of chapter 12.
Yes, sir.
Idam maya te bihitam kurudvaha dhruvasya vikhyata vishuddha karmanah hitvar bhaka kridanakani matur Griham cha Vishnum Sharanam Yojagama. The transcendental activities of Dhruva Maharaj are well known all over the world, and they are very pure. In childhood, Dhruva Maharaj rejected all kinds of toys and playthings, left the protection of his mother, and seriously took shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. My dear Vidura, I therefore conclude this narration, for I have described to you all its details. It is said by Chanakya Pandit that life is certainly short for everyone, but if one acts properly, his reputation will remain for a generation. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna is everlastingly famous, so the reputation of Lord Krishna's devotee is also everlasting. Therefore, in describing Dhruva Maharaj's activities, two specific words have been used: Vikyata, very famous, and Vishuddha, transcendental. Dhruva Maharaj is leaving home at a tender age and taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the forest is a unique example in this world. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 12th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Dhruva Maharaj Goes Back to Godhead. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Gurudasa Jayadvaita Swami Namane. I like this recap, seeing Hitvarbhaka Kridanakani. He totally gave up any kind of playthings, toys and playthings, even as a child for children. Actually, I was just working with a friend of mine, Matthew. He's got a couple of kids. He brings them to the temple, and he was commenting that when you have a child, the child always wants to have fun. That's the primary focus for the child. And a child who isn't trained properly, who doesn't go through the ashrams, who isn't trained as a brahmachari, becomes an adult who only wants to have fun. And still, as an adult, still we don't give up, our playthings. The playthings may be different. They may be, your car or whatever it is. But just like big children, the aim is the same. And so even as a child, even more difficult for a child to give up playing, because it's their, I was going to say prescribed duty. It's certainly their nature to have fun. At that age, it's appropriate. But even at that age, he gave it up, and therefore he endeared himself so deeply to Narada Muni. And because he pleased his spiritual master, even as a child, he was able to give up such powerful attachments, the attachment to one's own mother. As a child, we're given that as an example of how to chant attentively, crying out to Krishna like a child crying out for its mother. So we can imagine, how intense this attachment is. And yet he gave up Mathur and Griham and the protection of his house. He gave it all up. It sounds to me like Vanaprastha or sannyas practically. Of course, he came back to the kingdom and lived out his life as a grahasta, as a ruler. But in terms of his austerity performed as a child, he gave it all up. And therefore we saw in the recap, well, not in the recap, but later on in life, he was able to do it again because he had already done it once. And so he was able to do that again. But Vishnum Sharanam Jojagama, he went and took complete shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, Maitreya Rishi is concluding his narration. We finally completed this pastime. So I open it up to the Sangha for any last comments.
Thank you so much for reading and commenting. I just posted a short thing saying, I also only want to have fun. What can be done? And our dear friend Madhupati Prabhu suggests that real fun is internal, ananda. Soul is Satchit Ananda. So if you have any further comments on that, what this problem of only wanting to have fun, even apparently as an adult.
Susukam kartamavyam. What we do is fun. We chant, we dance. We just had so many devotees visiting here, and so our last Sunday feast, we had the most amazing kirtan, and it was so much fun. But the fun is a natural byproduct of what we do. It's not what we're looking for. And so, this concept of, oh, that class was very enjoyable, that kirtan was very enjoyable. We have to correct that mentality that I believe Guru Maharaj mentioned at one point that Srila Prabhupada said, this kirtan is not for your enjoyment. Something along those lines. That it's a shift of mentality. Then naturally it will be enjoyable. But that's not why we're doing it. We're not trying to shift our enjoyment from the failed project of the material world that, okay, well, now maybe I can enjoy the spiritual world. No, it's not. That's not the project. The project is to serve. And naturally, by being in one's constitutional position, it's enjoyable. That's the quality of the soul, Ananda. So as Madhupati Prabhu said, that's the quality of the soul. So when you're engaged properly, naturally you'll feel that. And you don't need to hunt for it separately. These things cover, it was quoted the other day, Guru Maharaj quoted, and Praveen Krishna Prabhu found the quote, Hetu Kovidaha, Tasyaiva Hetu Prateta Kovida. Look for that thing which is not obtainable anywhere here. The Gabhira Ranghasa, by the powerful force of nature, the Sukha and Dukkha are going to come and go. Even the nature of those words, ka means ether. So you have you have good ether and bad ether, but can you capture it? Can you actually capture, happiness? It just slips through your fingers. So this attempt to try to enjoy something, if you try to enter kirtan in that way, then you might enjoy it, but then you'll also go and enjoy the club right after. But if you enter it with a service mentality, then you'll naturally enjoy it eternally. So that's kind of our motivation is not one of attempting to enjoy, but our motivation is one of attempting to serve. And in that constitutional position, life will be so enjoyable.
Jai. Vijay Krishna Prabhu, please go ahead.
Yes, Radesh Prabhu, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Prabhu.
Sorry, I couldn't get to my microphone. Yes, I can hear you, Prabhu.
Do you mind reading again the first sentence of the translation?
I closed the Srimad Bhagavatam, but I can very quickly find it again. The first sentence of the translation: the transcendental activities of Dhruva Maharaj are well known all over the world, and they are very pure.
Yes, thank you very much, your most kind Dandavat Pranams Prabhu. That is the sentence. Based on this sentence, my question is, why very pure? That is my question.
Vishuddha. When you're attempting to act in this material world, the highest platform in the mode of goodness is pure. But Vishuddha, Shuddha Sattva, that pure platform of goodness is that of service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Dhruva Maharaj had that exclusive purpose. And it was tainted in the beginning with, there was some mishra, there was some mixed motivation to acquire something. And when that mishra was taken away, when that mixed motivation was gone, and he recognized his pure purpose, then his pastimes are very pure. Then everything else is forgotten about. The conclusion is that he reached Godhead. He purified his purpose. So Vishuddha, completely pure, no material contamination.
Of course, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Praveen Krishna Prabhu has a lengthy comment here, which I will read. He says, when I was having a discussion with a devotee, he mentioned this statement of Prabhupada, where Prabhupada aimed that his disciples will start initiating in 1975. The devotee told me that although Prabhupada wanted this, he nonetheless never did it. Also, the devotee tells me that Prabhupada had only 12 Ritviks at the end. So he says that although Prabhupada, through statements, did indicate everyone should initiate, but through his actions, he showed that not all can be Diksha Gurus. How valid is this, or not for discussion? Since you read the verse and commented, Radhesha Prabhu, it's actually your turn to comment on this, should you like to.
The topic of initiating spiritual masters.
Sure.
We've been discussing these things at length, actually, lately, myself and a number of other devotees discussing it here with our resident sannyasi, Ashram Maharaj, and even with our Guru Maharaj, His Divine Grace Jayadvaita Maharaj. And this institutional concept of being granted the right to initiate kind of defies the intimacy of what the longstanding precedent of finding someone with whom you have an intimate relationship with, and thus seeking their shelter. So the thought that we need to, seek an Uttamadhikari, a perfect spiritual master, even that kind of goes out the window. The discussion is so nuanced and so lengthy and becomes so convoluted in the context of our institution, institutional necessities of screening, vetting out who's not going to fall down because of our history of difficulties, with spiritual masters falling down, and therefore all the bureaucracy and red tape that comes with trying to decide who's allowed to. It takes away some of the intimacy of the relationship, but at the same time, it's necessary from an institutional point of view. So it's not an easy question to answer. Philosophically, we have one answer. Philosophically, everyone's capable of initiating, and it's up to the guru and the disciple to define that relationship. It's not for anyone else to define. And institutionally, it's necessary that we don't just have complete mayhem and chaos. So there's two things that need to be balanced. And in general, my opinion is that in general it's kind of been working all right. But I definitely, I know my Guru Maharaj, he encouraged certain God brothers that you should initiate, and they didn't want to go through the whole process through the movement to become acknowledged spiritual masters. So that's unfortunate, because there are many qualified people who already have Shiksha disciples. And when you're a Varta Pradarshika Guru, you're showing people the path, then generally that ends up being your Diksha Guru. And yet we don't see that. We see people becoming Varta Pradarshika Gurus, and now that they've shown the path, then you get funneled into the system. You can go one of 5 or 6 superstar guru directions, and everyone just gets put through the machine, when actually their most intimate connection is with who now becomes just their Shiksha Guru. So I guess it doesn't matter in that sense. You can get Diksha and take Shiksha from whoever you like, but ideally the most intimate connection you have is with your Diksha Guru, and we haven't completely solved that problem. And I'm thankful that I'm not in management, and it doesn't fall on my shoulders to solve that problem. But I'd love to see it arranged in such a way at some future point in which the more qualified people, and there are so many, are allowed, even if they're not labeled Uttamadhikaris or in some supreme position, that they have their students and they can share this wisdom. There's so many people that need the mercy, and if we won't give it, then who will?
Sadhu, sadhu. Thank you. Like you say, that's a lengthy discussion and nuanced, and I think you've stated things very clearly and beautifully from your own point of view. And we're actually at the top of the hour here in the eastern seaboard of the United States. So although we could churn this topic for another couple of hours, I'm sure, it is time for some kirtan. And let's see. Vijay Krishna Prabhu, would you like to lead us in closing kirtan today?
Yes. Ekendra Prabhu, just a second. I'm just getting ready. And I do hope again that my internet connection is good, related to the sound of my mridanga. Here it goes.
Perfect.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribrajacharya Ashtotara Sata Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Brinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sekaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivashadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath, Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mayi Ki Jai, Jamuna Mayi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, and thank you everyone so much for being here. And Maharaj said he would be with us again tomorrow, being Thursday, for Chaitanya Charitamrita, and we will have Friday free for Harinam, should we so choose. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj and friends Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Ekendra Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Jai Radhesh Prabhu. Hare Krishna.